Hey guys, welcome back to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath Holland, and I want to set up the conversation that you are about to be a part of. This is the return of Brian Cray from Alpha Video. So, a lot of you guys have reached out to me and you said, I love your interview with Brian from Alpha Video. There is a video called The Alpha Video Interview. I'll link to it in the description of this video. I've probably popped it up here. A lot of you guys connected with Brian, who is the guy, basically the acquisitions guy and the guy that's making these decisions at Alpha Video to get those discs from a film vault in onto your shelf. Like, that's his job. And I think a lot of you guys connected with him, and me too, because of his authenticity and his knowledge and his passion, and just his work is fascinating, but he's just a really interesting guy. So when I saw an opportunity with the new Alpha Video titles coming out, I saw an opportunity to bring him back to talk about the stuff he's working on. This is not just like a PR thing where, okay, tell me about this. It's really just a conversation about these weird, strange, kind of unpainted areas of our fandom. You know, the Alpha Video is really hitting a lot of the stuff that's forgotten, that's fallen off the radar. And so to get the inside scoop on that from the guy that's actually making it in the first place was super valuable. And I gotta tell you, like, this is even better than the Alpha Video interview we did the first time. And I hope it's the beginning of so much more, because I know Brian has this incredible knowledge. And I just have a blast talking to him. And I know you guys have a blast hanging out with him too. So I should also set up, this was a video recorded over Zoom. So I like to shoot myself in 4K for these videos and then edit that footage in. That was not a possibility for this. My footage didn't turn out, so I wasn't able to do that. So this is just the Zoom recording as it is. It's a little bit low res. And if you're listening to the audio version of this, which maybe you are, then it doesn't matter in the first place. But there is a video for it on YouTube that you can go watch with all the box art, all the covers, and it's not just the stuff that's coming out. It's like deeper things that we're gonna test, really deep pop culture stuff that we're gonna get into here, and I know you're here for it. Guys, without further ado, Brian Cray returns. Welcome back to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath Holland, and I am joined by Brian Cray from Alpha Video. Brian Cray has made a return. Welcome back, Brian.
I'm honored to be here again. Thank you, Heath.
I had such a blast talking to you the first time you were here. Your transparency, your knowledge about movie history really shone through, and I saw an opportunity to do something really cool, which was to have you come back as often as you'll come to talk about the stuff you've been working on at Alpha Video. And this is sort of the first of those things. So thank you for being open to doing that.
Hey, I'm happy to do it anytime. As long as we keep doing releases, I'm happy to come on and talk about it.
And you know what was great too is that a lot of people saw that first. It's an interview, but it felt more like a conversation, and they really connected with you. And a lot of people were like, "Well, this guy's great. I want to check out some of these releases." I just think that's a really natural, people are connecting with the work that you're doing, which is a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alpha Video has kind of always been like the shadow label, very mysterious, and there's no point in that in 2024. With the internet and everything else, you can find everything out. So what is the way people who are my predecessors operated? There's no reason to continue that way. Not in the, there really wasn't back then, and there really isn't now a reason to be that way.
Well, I think we're entering a new era of transparency because of social media, because of the internet. Where it's at these days is that people just want to have a connection with with a face at a company. They want to feel like they're, making a connection with the business itself. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
No.
We got about 10 titles to talk about here. We don't have to spend too long on them, but I should mention that everything we're going to talk about is, all but one of these titles is the March 23rd, March 26th?
March 26th release. One of them was supposed to be part of the March 26th release, but it's coming out April 23rd, but it's available for pre-order now. I don't know when you're gonna be posting.
It'll be soon. It'll be soon after this, probably within. They're seeing this before it's out. So
okay,
let's do that, and there'll be links in the description where you can pre-order this, but
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking about The Abominations of Frankenstein. It was supposed to be included in the March titles. It's an
Hmm,
April
hmm.
title now, but I know this is something that you're especially interested in. It's from the Alpha New Cinema
Hmm,
line. Let's talk a little
hmm.
bit about The Abominations of Frankenstein.
Well, that's a film by Sebastian Godin, and Sebastian is a Canadian independent filmmaker who they have a love for 70s horror, I would say. And we had done one of Seb's films years ago called Slimoids, which was part of a double feature with Joshua Kennedy's The Fungus Among Us. And my predecessor, Steve Kaplan, kind of gave Seb a hard time about the film. I mean, to give you a little background, when I started with Alpha Video, Steve had an obsession with horror films. And as you might guess, all the public domain horror films ran out a long time ago. And he wanted me to go out to kind of conventions and meet filmmakers, uh, independent filmmakers that were making uh, horror films, which I was happy to do because, I mean, I'm not a huge horror fan myself, but I have a lot of friends who are. And I mean, my brother is a horror filmmaker, Terrence Krey. His last film, An Unquiet Grave, got some good notices and was on Shudder. And it actually, I think, got a physical media release on Image because I think they do some of Shudder's films on physical. That's my goal is to one day Alpha Video can be good enough to put out one of my brother's films. And
That was the plan all along. It's been a long game.
well, I think he's been very lucky. I'm very proud of him. I think since the pandemic, I think he's been getting more notices. And because Unquiet Grave got reviewed in the New York Times and stuff like that. But going back to when I first started with Alpha, so I'd kind of go to conventions and talk to horror filmmakers, and I'd bring the films back, and Steve didn't really like them because he kind of wanted everything to be like the Killer Shrews or
Hmm.
the Giant Gila Monster, and he'd be upset that there'd be too much swearing or there were women with tattoos and purple hair, things like that. Very conservative. And since he's been gone, I've been doing a lot of uh, I've been contacting a lot of these people, and we've been doing them again. And I really love working with young filmmakers and getting their films out there because a lot of them still want a physical media release
Hmm.
of their films. And yeah, Seb, when we put out Slimoids, Steve kind of gave him a hard time. And the big thing was that he contacted him and said, you know, my son was looking at the film the other day and he said, is it pronounced Slimoids? And which I would think you would just know it's slime. And the whole thing is it's like Seb's tribute to Gremlins and Ghoulies and my favorite Hobgoblins. And it's just, these kind of puppet monsters, which I love because the films I've actually made have all been with puppets. So I love puppets and I would think you would know that it's
Yeah.
slime and oids. And the funny thing is and of course Steve never saw this because he didn't have anything to do with the authoring, that when he sent us the final version of the film, he marked it spell check oids, which I thought was really hilarious. So, yeah, Abominations of Frankenstein is something Seb came up with, I think, during the pandemic, which
Hmm.
is he's a huge fan of the Frankenstein mythos or the original novel. And it's their take on it. And uh, he says they say they're inspired by Al Adamson and Andy Milligan. I saw a lot of influence of Andy Warhol's Frankenstein, or maybe we should say Paul Morrissey's Frankenstein, because he actually directed it. But I really like it. I'm really proud of it. I think Seb should be proud of it. And it's a real DVD from Alpha Video. It's got commentary. It's got a making of.
It
So it's
does.
packed
Yes.
with special features. So yeah, I'm really happy with that, and we have uh, a lot of young filmmakers on the Alpha New Cinema uh, label, and I'm really proud of those, and I would like to see them get more attention. Another one, we talked about Joshua Kennedy, but another one I'd like to mention is we were talking about Dark Shadows last time. There's a young man named Ansel Faraj, who's he's out of Venice, California. He does films that are they're very influenced, I would say, by German expressionism and film noir and early Tim Burton. And Ansel he's a huge fan of the old Dark Shadows, and he's gotten the actors from Dark Shadows to be in his films, like
Wow.
Jerry Lacey and the late Christopher Pennock and Lara Parker. And we've put out several of Ansel's films. One is called Theater Fantastique. Another one is called the Detective Adam Serra Chronicles. And though I would recommend those to anybody who's interested in kind of that genre, and also anybody who's interested in the original Dark Shadows. So that's my, that's what brings me the greatest happiness is to um, get the work of independent filmmakers out there, young filmmakers,
Hmm.
and that we're providing an outlet for them that maybe bigger companies are not. And the one thing that kind of binds them all is that they all have an affection for the horror and fantasy cinema long before they were born.
Hmm.
So even if you're somebody older, you might get something out of Josh and Seb and Ansel's films. So it's not just it's not just something. They are modern, and certainly Seb's take on Frankenstein is very modern. But I think if you have a taste for those older films, you'll enjoy them as well.
Yeah, I got the performance of Dr. Frankenstein in this movie by
Mhm.
Anthony D.P.
DP
Mann
man, yeah.
is next level. I mean, it's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good. It's
yeah,
almost got, I mean, there's like a classic theater thing going on.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
kind of uncommon for this style, for essentially like a micro budget horror movie or a very low
yeah. Well,
budget
he was
horror
very
movie.
influenced by Hammer too, so I think that
Yeah.
comes in.
Yeah, there's like this Shakespearean grandeur that comes through in this performance. Anyways, people, micro budget and low budget horror is huge. I don't have to tell you because you know, but it is huge. The audience for these things are really um rabid. And so I think that they might not have known about this. I'm glad that we got to
Hmm.
talk about it and you've given them other directions that they can go off into as well. Where I guess we're about to enter public domain land. We're about to go
Yeah,
deep into the cinematic
yeah,
past. On that
yeah.
note, maybe I'll start. Let's just go really far back. Let's talk about Silent Slapstick Comedy Parade, Volume 3. So this is four shorts. We got comedy shorts from 1913, 1917, 1920, and 1924. A couple of these stood out to me. One of them has Charlie Chase and Oliver Hardy from 1920, which is before they were kind of who they would become, when they were still sort of rising through the ranks, I would say. And then Family Life from 1924, I thought was just really fun and really surreal. And I don't know, this is the third volume of these.
Well,
I
I
just
should mention that
Please do.
we have so many different series of those silent comedy shirts because we've gotten so many of them from either. I should mention that all these we're going to be talking about are from the Samuel M. Sherman archives, except for one, I think. Uh, but we've gotten so many from Sam Sherman, from John K. Carpenter, and from my former place of employment, the Streamlined Films Archives, that we've kind of had to make. Wasn't really my idea; it was more Steve's. Have all these different lines of silent comedy uh, shorts,
Mhm.
compilations, because we just have so many of them. and I think I only revived that title because I try to keep the amount of shorts consistent on each series. I think Silent Comedy Collection has 5 shorts. Silent Comedy Marathon has 10, and that Silent Slapstick has 4. So that's the only reasoning behind the different titles. And of course, if we can do something that's based on one comedian, we will. But that's harder and harder now as
Right.
the material becomes more and more scarce. So yeah, but yeah, those are all from Sam's collection. Unfortunately, the one with Oliver Hardy and Charlie Chase is probably uh, the least as far as picture quality. But the other ones are okay, but they're probably not as interesting because they're not household names like Charlie Chase and Oliver
Right.
Hardy. I don't know if Charlie Chase is a household name anymore, but he should be.
He should be. Yeah. Yeah, we're in an era now where I think a lot of people won't even watch a black and white movie, you know. So the idea of some of these silent guys, but that's the benefit of this too, is you can whenever we talk about this stuff, people go, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. I want to go." They just need a gateway. They just need somebody to be
Yeah,
like, "This is
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
cool." And
yeah,
that's one of the things that I like. That's one of the joys that I get for talking to you about
yeah.
these things is because I love the history. I mean, I'm on the path of exploration and discovery with it too. And it's
It might
good to be.
relax them at night, if nothing else. I mean, you know.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, one
And
of my first experiences with not my first experiences because but there was a public domain label called East West. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
sure.
They did slim cases. I actually have one of them right here. There's they did anime. They did anime they did anime releases that they weren't supposed to do, basically.
Yeah.
And and I think that's why they went out of business. Uh, but what was great about their DVDs is that they would start they would end and then they would just start all over again. So they would just you could play it on a loop.
Yeah.
And when I was going to film, you know, when I was majoring in film at Hunter College, I was also working full time at a Barnes and Noble. And so I would basically come home for a few hours. I wouldn't want to really go to sleep because I thought I would oversleep and miss work. So it would like those would lull me into like a state of half sleep.
Hmm.
So I would wake up on time. And what was funny is they also put out a show called Space Angel, which it's Cambria Productions, and it's that Synchro-Vox technique that we may know from Clutch Cargo,
Clutch
which is
Cargo.
very
Yeah.
disturbing because they superimpose actual lips onto to save money on the animation.
Yes.
And Space Angel was a science fiction show that had artwork from Alex Toth and Doug Wildey. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, that created Johnny Quest. And I always remember that. And we now have 9 volumes out of Space Angel, so we've far surpassed East West's. That's actually public domain. That was okay to put out. The Captain Harlock DVD I just showed you,
Yeah.
no. But we've I've always remembered that, and because of that, we have 9 volumes out of Space Angel. Uh, so if anybody needs help getting to sleep at night, I would recommend watching Space Angel. Now, if you want to find those, you have to kind of look because Steve had told it was my idea to do Space Angel because I remembered the DVD that I used to watch in college. But he was like, Space Angel's a bad name. And but I'm like, that's what it's called. That's what people have. If anybody saw it on TV, they're gonna, you know,
Yeah.
that's what they're gonna remember. So he was like, what's something else? And I remembered that he wanted me to come up with something off the top of my head. I remember that when the Sci-Fi Channel first started, they would show cartoons as Sci-Fi Cartoon Quest. So I just said, uh, how about Sci-Fi Cartoon Classics? So there are 9 volumes of Space Angel, a total of 36 episodes. I hope my math is right. Uh, and you can get them, but you have to look for Sci-Fi Cartoon Classics because the former VP of acquisitions didn't think Space Angel was a good name.
Would you ever consider in your position now, would you ever consider rebranding those to the proper title so they're easier to search?
Well, I have done a little of that. The only
Okay.
what I have done is they're available as bundle packs now that you can get. I think you can get all of them in two bundle packs as Space Angel Volume 1 and Space Angel Volume 2. So if you want to buy more than one disc of it, which probably most people do when they buy
Right.
a TV show, they don't want to buy just 4 episodes. You can find it as Space Angel. So I will recommend that if there's anybody out there that remembers Space Angel. We've put out more episodes than anybody else. I think VCI did, in addition to the East West DVD that had 2 episodes, VCI had done one with 4. But we have 9 volumes with 4 episodes apiece. And like I said, they're available in bundle packs. And I really like it. I'm a huge fan of, I'm a huge comic book fan. So I love Alex Toth, who, if people don't know who he was, I mean, he was a comic artist, but he also designed all the 60s Hanna-Barbera shows like Space Ghost and Herculoids and
Birdman too, right?
Galaxy
Did he do
Trio,
Birdman?
Birdman. He did
Yeah.
Super Friends in the 1970s. So it's beautiful artwork. It's
Hmm.
beautiful artwork. It's basically comic book panels, uh, but you have to deal with the fact that a human mouth
It's a
is,
mouth moving. Yeah.
yeah, and that is really disturbing
But
to
once you
people.
get
But
used to like the charm of that, I don't know, charm might not be the right word.
But
I don't know.
it's better artwork than Clutch Cargo, I should say, because it's Tooth and Doug Wildey,
Yeah.
and I think Ray Morrow might have been involved too. But it's better artwork than Clutch Cargo. The artwork in Clutch Cargo was kind of, it looked like folk art, you know. I mean,
Right.
it had a very amateurish quality, but
But
Space Age.
listen, Clutch Cargo is pretty cool too. Isn't Clutch
Well, we
Cargo
have
in Pulp
every episode of
Fiction
Clutch
when
Cargo out too. So if you
isn't
like Clutch
isn't
Cargo,
isn't Butch watching Clutch Cargo and like little boy
yeah.
Butch in Pulp Fiction when Christopher Walken comes in to talk about the
That's a
watch?
lot of ass. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's the scene. Yeah. I think most people know what Clutch Cargo is because of Pulp Fiction now,
That's
because
probably
I
true.
think every station in our lifetimes was too afraid of scaring children to play it, because I don't remember ever seeing it in New
No,
York.
no, you had to seek it out once the DVD era began.
Yeah.
That's when I discovered it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Let's go.
Sorry, went off on
No,
a
no. This
talking
is
about
great.
things that I find more interesting, I guess.
This is what I was kind of hoping would happen is that we just go on some
Yeah,
sidebar.
yeah, yeah.
Riders of the Pony Express. This is a
Speaking of
can
Giant Gila Monster and Killer Shrews, it has one of the stars of those 2 movies, Ken Curtis.
well, you know, this is one of the things that's interesting to me because I am a Western fan. I'm a fan of the Western genre.
Yeah, yeah.
And Ken Curtis is famous. I think a lot of people, if they do know who he is now, they know him as Festus from
Yes.
Gunsmoke, and that is such and the Searchers as well, which is
Mhm.
kind of the same character as Festus, where he's this big, exaggerated country guy. But before that, he was a straight like a he so in
And he
Riders
was
of
a
the Pony
singer. He was
Express.
in the Sons of the Pioneers.
That's exactly right. Yeah, he was a singer. He was one of the Sons of the Pioneers, and he was one of the few that transitioned into a star of these B movies that could do his own stunts. He could do a lot
Hmm.
of his own tumbling and riding and stuff, and had that um the gravitas to carry a movie.
Hmm.
Now the quality on this was not very good. I gotta let's
No, it's not.
it's pretty
Well, it's a color movie, and it's a black and white version.
is there do you know if the color even if the color
I
if
don't
a
think so,
I
because
don't think so either.
I don't think anybody else has had that one out. That's from
No.
Sam, and God knows where he got it from. Just to be
Yeah.
honest with
It
you.
seems to only survive as this black and white.
Yeah, and
This
whenever, and we put out a few things where it's a black and white version of a color movie, and it never looks great. But
yeah.
that's all that exists, unfortunately. And in this particular case, I can, if somebody's out there and has the color version,
Ooh, yeah.
either they should let me know or they should put it out themselves.
Yes. Yeah, but I know I enjoyed this. I mean
Okay, good.
these are kind of my thing right now. I don't know why exactly right now, but the last year or so I've just fallen down a B Western rabbit hole and that's like all I want to watch is B Westerns.
Yeah, yeah, I get
Yeah.
that.
You're like, okay,
I'm
that's
into my Synchro-Vox, you know?
yeah. Where should we? Well, let's just go to another Western. Let's talk about Buster
Yeah.
Crabbe and the Renegade because that's This is another cool one because it's Flash Gordon. I mean, it's Flash
Yeah,
Gordon.
yeah, yeah. He
He
saved
did a
it.
lot of these. He did oh, I don't even know. Quite a few of these westerns, and they some of them are kind of hard to find or kind of hard to
Yeah.
see. Fuzzy St. John, Al Fuzzy St. John is interesting to me because he was a guy that also was not that character. Predates, he goes back
Mhm.
to the silence era, if
Oh,
memory
we have
serves.
tons of silent shorts with him on those
Yeah.
various series that I mentioned: Silent Slapstick, Silent Comedy Collection, Silent Comedy Marathon, Silent Comedy Dinner. I mean, it's just,
Silent. Let's
so
let's
many
let's
of them
brainstorm
now.
some more. Silent comedy showdown. Did you say showdown?
Well, yeah, that would imply there was some kind of action, and but I'm
Anyway,
trying
I
to.
like this one. I'm a Buster Crabbe fan, and any chance I get to see more to add a little Buster Crabbe to my collection
Yeah,
is a
yeah, and
good
that's
thing.
that's a PRC film, public domain one. We had talked last time about how we recently licensed some of the ones that were renewed
Right.
from Films Around the World Incorporated, but that's one of the public domain ones, and we actually have more of the public domain ones coming out in the next release, which
Oh,
I don't know, the May, I hope. I have to get it to them in the
yeah.
next few days, I think.
Yeah, you have to make it happen. You have to
Yeah,
make
I
it.
have to make it happen. If it doesn't, yeah, nobody checks up on me. So yeah, I have to do it.
Let's do Oddities Beyond Belief.
Yeah,
Is this
oddities.
a
But
volume? No,
did
it's
you
just
like that? Because that is
yeah.
really me going out of my way to make something unique that I worry nobody will care. Because
Oh,
what
I liked it
happened
a lot.
was good. That what happened with that was a compilation that was sent to us by Sam, and the cover was, for whatever reason, was not liked by the owner of the company. So my
This
solution to
cover?
that, this cover, he changed his mind the next day though, but it was too late because I'd already initiated my
What's wrong with the
plan
cover?
to yeah, I don't know. Um, but what happened, the Oddities Beyond Belief are retitled, they were originally called Walter Futter's Curiosities,
Hmm.
which were short subjects that were compiled by this gentleman named Walter Futter, who basically used to do did what I used to do. He had a stock footage library of footage that he had collected from foreign studios and also leftover from the Hollywood studios, all this strange footage, and he would edit this together. And it would be distributed as shorts called Walter Futter's Curiosities that were sometimes shown before films or in between films with double features. I think Educational and Columbia both put it out certain times, maybe Paramount too, because it costs nothing because he already had the footage. They were basically, paying for the editing and the narration. And, they're a little off color, but the narration is a little off color and a little,
Right.
I kind of hate the word politically incorrect because it's just insensitive. It's
Yeah.
not politically incorrect. It's not because a lot of it deals with foreign countries and how we looked at foreign countries or any other country other than America in 1930. But
But you didn't feel compelled to put a warning at the beginning of it that says it was
I don't think it
wrong
was. I don't
then
think there's
and it's
anything in
wrong
it that
now.
quite bad. It's not as bad
It's
as
not.
banned cartoons.
There's
I've
just a few
read about
things that
other
you go
ones.
like, hmm.
I've read about other ones that are really insensitive, but if anybody has those, let me know. Um, so they were re-released later for I guess the 8 millimeter or 16 millimeter home movie market as Oddities Beyond Belief. But I kind of made the connection that we had put out a lot of the Walter Futter's Curiosity shorts on different compilations. So I said, well, if you're not happy with this cover, I'm going to take all those shorts that we put out as bonuses on other DVDs and have the most comprehensive collection of Walter Futter shorts in the history of physical media,
Yeah.
which is what I did. Um, and of course, then he changed his mind and said he liked the cover. So it still says Oddities Beyond Belief. But my idea of it, my concept of it, was an actual comprehensive collection of all the Walter Futter material that's out there. If anybody's interested,
And that's what
uh,
it is, right? Is
that's
it's
what it is. That's what it is. Yeah, even though it's
it
Oddities
even says
Beyond Belief.
so people
Yeah,
in
that's what I
parentheses
really wanted
says
it to be
yeah.
called, is the Walter Futter's Uh,
Curiosities collection,
yeah, yeah. But
1930.
yeah, yeah. So if anybody's interested, I don't think people know too much about them. I mean, it's Ripley's Believe It or Not,
That's
basically.
exactly what it
It's
is.
ex
Yeah.
exactly what it is. I mean, that was a popular newspaper feature at the time, and basically they were capitalizing on that with this. I mean, Walter Futter, as I mentioned in the liner notes, was called the junk man of filmdom. So he just had all these random bits and bobs that he would edit together, and supposedly they were very popular. I mean, they kept making them for years. So I
Yep.
don't think there's been any kind of Walter Futter standalone DVD release in the history of physical media. If there is, somebody let me know.
You did it.
Yeah. So
You authored
I
that
don't
book.
know what the audience for that is. Maybe you can help me. I mean, maybe it's just people that like those old shorts because I mean, they seem to be very popular when they showed them on TCM. I think they called them One Reel Wonders. So I mean, there are
Right.
people that are interested in them.
You have to, well, here's the thing, you have to know what it is. And if you don't, if you, so Oddities Beyond Beliefs, this is why I think this is a good title for this and a good
Yeah.
presentation because it looks, it almost has a sideshow kind of quality that's beckoning. We've got curtains here, and it feels a little bit, and the eye, right? It
Yeah,
just
yeah,
feels like
yeah,
you're gonna get into something that's
yeah.
a little bit sensational and exploitative, um, and that's what it is. But I think that it's important that people aren't going to go seek out the odds of someone being like, I want a Walter Futter Curiosities
Right,
collection
right.
compilation. They have to know what it is. So I think maybe just us talking about
Yeah,
it has done a good service to say this is what
yeah.
it is. And I actually really enjoyed them. I'm a little bit
Good.
sad that there's not more,
I
but
always, well, maybe there will be if
hey,
find more. I don't know, or maybe
yeah.
somebody will contact me that watches this. But I always wonder if there are people that want to just recreate the movie-going experience of the 30s or 40s and have a cartoon, have a short like that, have a serial. So if you're one of those people, that will help you in that goal.
There you
I don't know
go.
if anybody actually does, but I'd
Well,
like to.
there was those Warner Night at the Movies where it would show a short and a reel, and
Sure.
Warner Brothers. So you should do that. You should package together these nights at the movies where you could do Night at the Movie 1934.
Yeah, well, there were other public domain labels that did that, but it would always be like the wrong time period. Then
Mhm.
they would have like a Fleischer Superman short, and then they would have like a 70s Italian Star Wars ripoff. It's like those it's like 30 years apart,
Yeah, they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Let's go to war. I guess let's start with the World War I on land and air.
Yeah.
This is two. This is two. No, it's three. I'm sorry, three shorts. 1916, 1918, and 1960. Basically dealing with World War I footage. Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, one of them is feature length, the Battle of Somme. I hope I'm pronouncing it. Battle of Somme or the Battle of Somme?
Okay. Yes,
I
let's
don't
say
know.
yes.
Okay, let's say yes. And that was actually a feature that was released
Hmm.
in well, it was released here, and I think, but it was released in Britain. And supposedly, when it came out in Britain, it was the highest grossing movie until Star Wars came out in
That's what
Britain,
it says.
supposedly. That's what I
Amazingly,
wrote. That's
the
what I read. I have a hard time believing that. I mean,
Amazingly, the unedited version of this film sold nearly 20 million tickets in its first 6 weeks of release in England, nearly half the population of the UK. This record would not be broken until the release of Star Wars in 1977, over 60 years later. What the heck?
yeah, and that's a slightly edited version for America because I think that edited version was
Nah,
meant to show, since we entered World War One later, I think it was meant to show people had just signed up, and maybe they didn't want to show them how quite bad it was where they were
right.
going. So yeah, so I mean that and there's a World War II release. That's just part and parcel of a public domain label is that there are just so many war documentaries that are certainly more for World War II.
World
Uh,
War II documentary double feature, holding
yeah,
it up so the
yeah.
camera can
So I
see.
mean, there's no way that we can avoid doing that material, and there are some
Yep.
people that want to see it. Certainly, as far as film history is concerned, there's a lot of people behind the camera that were involved that were great filmmakers. I mean, Ford and Capra, the ones that come to mind.
Did you read the book about Five Came Back? Did you read the book about there was a book and
No.
there ended up being a series about it as well. It's fascinating. It's called
Yeah.
Five Came Back that chronicles all those Hollywood people that went to war
Yeah.
and what they did and how it changed them.
Right, right. And I actually think the one you just showed, uh one of the documentaries was shot uh by actors in combat, holding camera. I know, I believe Eddie Albert. My brother's a huge Acres fan, so I always think of Eddie Albert. I think he was one of them, and I think another gentleman that's starred in swashbuckling films. I forget his name. I should have mentioned his name on the back cover. If I it might be with the Marines at Tarawa.
Much of the film was actually filmed by actor Lewis Hayward.
Lewis Hayward. Thank you.
He charged into battle with a 16 millimeter camera in hand and was eventually rewarded with a Bronze Star for his heroism. Wow.
Yeah, it was Lewis Hayward I was thinking of, but I believe Eddie Albert also shot some of it as well.
See, these are the war ones that I've watched most of what we're talking about here, but I haven't gotten to the war ones yet. Um, I saw Richard Carlson's name here. I'm trying to
Yeah, he
Fury in the
narrated a
Pacific.
lot of them because he had
Narrate,
that
yeah.
voice.
I don't know. That's fascinating to me. Just the idea of a Hollywood actor charging in with a 16
Yeah,
millimeter camera.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
And a
hopefully nothing like that ever
1944
happens
film,
again, but
right? A 1944 film that's full of realistic violence that actually got out to the public without really being cut cut down.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's what's so funny about those World War II documentaries is that the code doesn't apply to them at all. Like,
Right.
there are a lot of scenes of, say, the GIs going skinny dipping. Now, if you couldn't have seen Clark Gable or Gary Cooper's bare butt in the 1940s, but I guess if you were a GI, that's fine. It's in the name of the war effort. I always find that fascinating.
It's very fascinating. Yeah. Let's see. Well, I want to talk about classic cars of the 1930s and 1940s. This is a cleverly compiled, they're basically promotional films from
They are.
Chevy and Ford and
They're promotional films that were shown in theaters that pretended to be newsreels. They
Mhm.
were fake newsreels that were actually just advertisements for uh, new Chevrolet cars.
They kind of hide it though. They kind of
Yeah,
hide it
they
under,
hide it because
yeah.
they'll have like, and here's two cats boxing. It's just, and but it's not hard hitting news. It's all I guess local color type stories as
If
well.
anyone thinks that was a joke, there are literally two
They're
cats
literally cats
boxing.
boxing. So if anybody wants to license that from us as for their
Yeah,
documentary, come to me.
there you go.
Um, and there's also tons of women in 1930s and 1940s swimsuits. So if
Hmm.
that's one of your bugaboos, you should pick this one up.
Yeah.
I
The
find that
Tex
more interesting than cars, to be honest with you.
the Tex Avery, the wolf with the
Yes.
eye. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what we're dealing with.
yeah, yeah. It's the
Yeah.
same exact outfit too.
Yes. What's the deal
Integrated
with the
more.
turtle, man? The last one of these is like there's this they go drag this 200-year-old turtle out of the water and they're like, "It's gonna be turtle soup tonight, boys." It's like, no. They
Poor
like
turtle.
strap him to the hood of this car and it was like, man, no.
Yeah.
I don't know what the story behind that was, but I was like, why are they anyway, it was just interesting. They go it's a car thing, right? But they're pulling this huge turtle out of the water and then I guess they're gonna carve him up for dinner. That's one of those things that you're like, oh, that hasn't aged well.
No. I don't know how well it went over back then. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I always wondered. These things.
Probably for an audience largely of children and families too that are sitting there in between, you know, I don't even know. But yeah, what are they gonna do with a turtle, mommy?
Right, right, right. It's so cute. But
All
yeah,
right.
if you're into old cars, then and girls and women in swimsuits or one-piece swimsuits, I would recommend that.
Well,
And
let's
then
talk about it. Hold on. So there's that stunt too, where the guy is on the airplane and they bring him
mhm.
down. He's just holding on to the wing of this old airplane, and they bring him down, and he's gonna drop onto the roof of this.
The risks that
I think it was
people
a Chevy.
the risks that people took just to sell Chevrolet cars back then. I mean, geez.
It's like if he fell, that's it. I mean,
Right, right,
bye, bye
right.
bye.
They could have
Yeah,
covered that up.
right. It's
Um,
crazy times.
But yeah, we've just accumulated a lot of those news reels over the years. So I thought it was just time for another volume of them.
Yeah, it's
And,
cool. I mean,
the first one
it's
sold okay. The first one is maybe a little more interesting because it has some, like Jan Handy type films that have more of a narrative, but they're still selling Chevy cars. They're not. They pretend to have a story, but the real point of them is to
I
just
like them. I feel like they kind of work well with the Futter
yeah,
the
yeah.
oddity stuff.
Yeah, and I remember a lot of that stuff from Mystery Science Theater. They would show that stuff before the movie, and some of it was just the stories were so kind of bizarre that you didn't even realize that, oh, this is actually meant to sell a product, you know?
We're almost done. We got two left. I want to talk about Bill Patton in Fangs of Fate. This is another one I haven't watched yet, but I'm keen to do so.
I
It's a
mean,
silent Western. I'm looking for the year here.
this is one of the most obscure ones because if anybody remembers the old video label Video Yesteryear, they used to put out these giant book-like catalogs, and I would make lists, particularly of all the silent westerns that they had out that never came out on DVD. And Fangs of Fate was one of them that never had a DVD release. And I don't even know if the VHS release really existed because I assume they made those tapes on demand.
Yeah.
And that was one that was always on my wish list. And Sam had a copy of it. I don't know how great the quality is. It's not, I can guarantee it's not off that old videotape because I don't even know if that old videotape exists.
Mm.
But that's a first. Whenever I can say never before on DVD, I'm proud of myself because I feel like I'm doing a service because now there's a digital version out there of something, even if it's something a very, very, very low budget Western like that. It's a film that was made and now it's preserved. So yeah, Bill Patton, very obscure figure in the Western genre, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
but it's
that's a first. That's first. You can
that's really
tell.
it's
I mean,
really great.
Al Landron did a very good cover for that because there were really no images of Bill Patton anywhere.
Oh, really?
If somebody's got a cache of Bill Patton pictures out there, let me know. But we tried our best, you know.
All right, let's close it out with this isn't even new, but you see you can
It's not
explain it.
new, no, but I wanted to send it to you
Yeah.
because the reason I had a copy, I needed a reference copy of it because I've been working with a gentleman who's doing a documentary about Mad Magazine called When We Went Mad, and they wanted to license footage from that. That's actually, we did that in 2016, but I don't think it got any notice. But that's a show called Confidential File, which was kind of this kind of hectoring right-wing show
Mhm.
about the evils plaguing America at the time. And there are episodes. Well, what's most relevant to that documentary? There's an episode about horror comic books, specifically the ones made by EC, and that's why they're going to be using it in that documentary. But what is besides just the comical value of it, the fact that it's so overblown in its paranoia about the ills facing America in the 1950s, they are all directed by the great Irvin Kershner, or Kersh as we all call him, who besides films like Stakeout on Dope Street and The Eyes of Laura Mars, we best know him as the director of what I think I can conclusively say is the best Star Wars movie, Empire Strikes Back. And I think the only reason that we all care about with all due respect to George Lucas, who I have a massive amount of respect for, I think the reason that we all care so much about Star Wars is because of Empire Strikes Back and Irvin Kershner. And I think that's why we're disappointed with the other Star Wars films because Empire Strikes Back is just so good. And those were things he did in the beginning of his career. I mean, just as a struggling filmmaker, because we know that he didn't agree with the point of view of those shows. I believe he was a very liberal guy, and but they're really fascinating. And the comic book one, I had first seen footage from that in a movie called Comic Book Confidential, that I think came out in the late 1980s. It's pretty old because Frank Miller still has hair in it. Uh, and it's really interesting if you've never seen it. And there's no other release of those shows. There's three of them on there. I only could find three of them. There were a lot more, but God knows where they are.
Yeah.
And I was actually watching a video about Empire the other day, and they showed I'm sorry that I didn't note the channel, but they actually showed our cover for that, and
Oh,
I felt special. I felt special,
you were
for a second.
seen. Yeah, you got
Yeah,
seen.
yeah, yeah.
You're gonna be
I think they
seen
just
too
take
in
it
all
off
those.
IMDb, but
You're gonna be seen too
it's
when the letters start coming in from Star Wars fans who have something to say about
I
your.
you know I don't know how much Star Wars fans care about things that Kershner did. I think they should.
They
But
should. Yeah.
I find it really interesting, and it's also interesting, I guess, if you're a fan of EC comics or horror comics and the whole seduction of the innocent witch hunt type thing.
Frederick
It's really
Wortham. Yeah.
interesting, and I think the other ones are about
What's barbiturates? What is it?
barbiturates and
Drug
medical
abuse and quack doctors.
quack doctors. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting stuff, and it's kind of comical. The host is his name Paul Coates.
Yes.
He's like the original Morton Downey Jr. or
Oh yeah.
uh uh who's the uh who's the Let's Do It Live guy, who's
Oh, Geraldo? Is that who you're? Was it Geraldo?
Geraldo. I forget his name for good reasons, but he's kind of the Paul Coates is kind of the Bill O'Reilly, who was I thinking of. So
Oh.
they're kind of
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's kind of the precursor of those
Yeah, I
types
was thinking of
of
when
shows.
they
He's
didn't
interesting.
didn't Geraldo go into a tomb? It was
Oh
Al
yeah,
Capone's.
yeah. It was
Al,
it was what was it? It was
wasn't it something
wasn't
with
it Al
Capone?
Capone's car, and it was his
It
glove
was
compartment,
something.
and there was
And then
nothing
there was
there.
nothing. It was nothing that was
Yeah.
worth being alive for. Yeah.
But I just think that releases, and I just happen to have a copy of it because, like I said, they're going to be licensing some footage
Hmm.
for it for the When We Go Mad documentary, which
Very good.
yeah
Very
soon.
good.
So
I'm
I just
glad you sent it to me.
see that and show that because I just think people don't know about it, and it's so to me it's so interesting. I mean, it's interesting to me as a Star Wars fan, as a comic book fan, but I
Yes.
think it's just so interesting. Period. Even if one of those episodes wasn't about EC and they weren't directed by Kershner, though they are so interesting because they are directed by Kershner because they have recreations of people dealing with these various ills, and it's like
That's it.
film noir.
Yes.
And the whole thing with the horror comic book one is that they show kids playing and reading comic books, and because one's reading a comic book, he picks up a rock and goes to kill another kid. I mean, this is what they thought back then. They thought you'd read a comic book, then pick up a rock and kill your friends. I mean,
Well, like they're
and
stabbing. They
that's
got a little pocket knife and they're
yeah.
stabbing around.
And it's actually so insulting because if you ever read any of those EC comic books, people are killed in such creative ways that to think that you're inspired to kill somebody with a rock is just insulting the writers and artists that came up with those stories.
Yes. Yes. The it's like half talking head and half
Hmm.
recreation. And the
Yeah.
recreations are so over the top. And the barbiturates one, the drugs one, the drug abuse one is like, starts out with one to take the edge off, then it becomes two, then eight, then 12. Oh, but who's counting? And it does have a real noir.
It's Kershner it's him prefiguring Requiem for a Dream. It's
Oh, yeah.
it's so you could say
It's
he did that
crazy.
first
What
too.
I, what's hard for me is that there's clearly no attempt at any sort of a journalistic integrity of getting both
No,
sides or an unbiased because
no.
they talk to no one that worked at EC or
Mm-mm.
that they
They
got the
talked to
one guy.
kids.
They got
They
one
talked
guy. He's
to
like,
kids.
I used to do this. I don't do this anymore. I don't feel good about it anymore. I used to do this. It's pretty terrible. I'm with you
And I don't
now.
think he was even a real artist because nobody's ever been able to identify him.
Oh, is that
So
he
it might have
just
been an actor or somebody who did one story. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But and also what's interesting about that is that show was actually supposed to be more of a left-wing stance, and
really?
it was made to kind of combat the McCarthy era. And the people that were financing it, when they found out what Coates was doing, they withdrew the financing because he went ahead and did something a lot more hectoring and conservative than they thought it would be. So it's kind of interesting how people can have one intent and the exact opposite ends up happening. And that's
Hmm.
why that show was short-lived, because the people who were financing it found out what Coates was doing.
That's crazy. But all right, so all of these are available. What Alpha Video?
You can get
Oldies.com is
them on
probably the
oldies.com
yeah.
cheaper than Amazon, but now everything is available on Amazon too. So, I mean, if you have Prime or you just like using Amazon, it'll be $2 more, but everything is available on Amazon now. So, it used to not be, but now it is. So
Very good.
you don't have to go to oldies.com if you don't want to, but we have, as Joe Biskin would say, we have a friends and family relationship with oldies.com still. So, whichever you want to use, you know.
Yeah. Very good. And we'll reference people to our first conversation, which was sort of an introductory
Mhm.
look at you and your work at Alpha Video and your getting to know you a little bit more. I'll pop that up here. That's only going to be in the link of this link in the description of this video as well.
Okay.
Anything else that we should talk about? Do you want to send people to go to his social
Well,
media
the only
sites
thing I
or?
really wanted to mention, because my artist Al Landron had mentioned after watching our first conversation, is a couple of years ago he came up with, and it's totally his idea. I'm not going to take any credit for it. The Alpha Video Retrograde line, which has kind of the retro VHS type art that a lot of labels are doing right now.
Mhm.
And but what's interesting about it, besides the fact that Al did fantastic covers, now some of them are um, they're the exact same master as the original Alpha Video release. But there are three things that are interesting. Some of them are redone and are superior quality. Star Odyssey, Count Dracula's Great Love, Escape from Planet Earth, Sisters of Death. Those are improved. Uh, Also, another thing is that, frankly, before I came to the company, some of the or when I was not running things, some of the covers were not the best. And I think some of these titles kind of fell through the cracks because the covers did not show you what they are. And there's one that I'm particularly proud of that is actually our bestseller in the Retrograde line. It's called Encounter with the Unknown, which is a film I used to see on TNT's Monster Vision in the 90s all the time. And it's a series of kind of like uh, paranormal stories narrated by Rod Serling. Now, I've seen a lot of reviews online where people said, "Oh, this is just 3 episodes of Night Gallery edited together." It's not 3 episodes of Night Gallery. First off, Night Gallery is copyrighted, so if I put out Night Gallery, I'd be in big trouble. But it's three kind of like, it's the hitchhiker story, all the tip of the Shaggy Dog stories, and it's narrated by Rod. And I think it was a very low budget affair because he doesn't even narrate the whole thing. Like sometimes it will just turn into a completely different narration. And then these stories, that's not Rod. And but that I'm really proud of. And the original cover we did not. It was, I think the person was going for make it look like the Twilight Zone opening, and it didn't convey it. And what Al's done for the Retrograde line is absolutely fantastic. And I recommend that one. A couple things that just fell through the cracks that we have in this line. We have Teenage Strangler out, which comes from an original print that was owned by Streamline Films. And if anybody knows that from Mystery Science Theater, that's and They Didn't Steal No Bike either movie. That's if anybody wants to see that without being riffed, that's a great, that kind of fell through the cracks too, because when that came out, I was telling Steve, "Oh, people love this movie from Mystery Science Theater," and he hated Mystery Science Theater, and he didn't care, he didn't understand, he never understood why we sold so many of Manos. And I would say that's because it's one of the most famous, popular Mystery Science Theater episodes. He'd be like, "Well, I saw that when it came out and it wasn't very good," and he just didn't get that. And the other thing that with the Retrograde line is that we have, I have put some licensed independent films in there because some of them had uh, releases from other labels, and they were plentiful. So I felt rather than just doing an Alpha Video version of something that already was available, let's put it in the Retrograde line and let's give it that retro VHS look that it never had because it didn't come out during the VHS era. So we've got Jacques Barrot's Candy Von Dude and Brett Kelly's Pray for the Beast as part of the Retrograde series. So it's very interesting. I mean, once you see the covers, and I wish I could show up.
I'll have popped them up. They'll see.
But I mean, Al did a fantastic job, and it's not. I've seen reviews of it where people say, oh, it's just the same old stuff, and it's like it's a lot of different stuff. It's some of it's licensed stuff, some of it's stuff that fell through the Alpha Video cracks, and some of them are new transfers. So I wanted to fly the flag for that a little bit.
Very good. Yeah. There's a lot of cynicism out there from some people, but the tribe is out there.
Warranted. Some of it is warranted, but I just, people have had questions about that particular line because I think it's very enticing to people. And of course, there are a lot of other labels that are doing these kind of retro covers. We're hardly unique with it, but people have wanted to know what is it exactly we're doing with it. And I've just told you.
Yeah, very good. And you can find it at oldies.com or
at Amazon. Yeah. Oldies might be a best bet because you could just type in Retrograde. I don't know what would come. Amazon's search engine is maybe not the best.
No.
Even like if you're trying to find DVDs or Blu-rays, I find, it's very difficult.
They'll funnel you to the digital or just somewhere else entirely.
Yeah, clothes or board games or yeah.
Well, Brian, this was a blast. We talked for almost an hour about these movies.
Good.
So,
good. Yeah. I had a great time. And, when we have our next release, and hopefully that's sooner rather than later, I'd be happy to come back. And anything else you want me to talk about, whether, if it's Alpha Video or not.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being honest and open with all these. It's refreshing, and it's a joy to talk to you about it. So thank you.
No, thank you, Heath. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. It's an honor.